He knows her name. The village of Chandanpur was small and quiet, surrounded by thick forests that stretched endlessly into the horizon. The people there lived simple lives, far from the chaos of the outside world. But among them was a family that had always seemed different. Raghav and Meera were humble villagers, hard-working and devoted to their 4 children. Ravi, Sohan, Leela and Pihu. The couple loved them dearly, but deep down, an unease had always lingered in their hearts. The children weren't like the others in the village. Their eyes were too wide, always watching, never blinking enough. Their feet were bare no matter the season, thick and large, leaving strange imprints in the mud that never matched their small frames. Their skin was dark, not just in color, but in an almost shadowy way, as if they could disappear into the night if they wished. And yet in the daylight, they behaved just like any other children. They ran through the fields, played near the river, and laughed at silly jokes. They ate their meals without complaint and never caused trouble. To outsiders, they were an ordinary family, but at night everything changed. The first disappearance. It happened for the first time on a cold winter night. Meera had tucked the children into bed as usual, whispering a soft lullaby before blowing out the lantern. The hut was small, one room for sleeping, another for cooking, so she and Raghav lay down just a few feet away from the children's beds. But when she woke in the middle of the night, the hut was eerily quiet. Too quiet. A mother's instinct struck her with sudden panic. She turned toward the children's beds and gasped. They were gone. Meera shook Raghav awake. "The children! They're not here!" Raghav bolted upright, his heart hammering. He looked toward the door. It was still bolted from the inside. There was no way anyone could have left. Yet the beds were empty. The room felt colder, as if something unnatural had passed through. Raghav grabbed a lantern and unbolted the door, stepping outside. Meera followed, her breath visible in the chilly air. They searched the village, calling their children's names. No answer. The few neighbors who heard them came out, confused and sleepy. No one had seen anything. And then, just before dawn, when the first light touched the sky, Meera and Raghav returned to their hut, exhausted, hopeless. That's when they saw them. The children were back in their beds. Meera rushed to them, shaking their shoulders. "Where did you go? Answer me!" The children slowly opened their eyes, staring blankly at her. "We were here," Ravi murmured. "No, you weren't," Raghav snapped. "We looked everywhere." But the children only blinked at him, their faces eerily calm. Meera touched Pihu's forehead. It was cold, not freezing, but not warm like it should have been after sleeping under a thick blanket. Her fingers trembled as she tucked them in again. Something wasn't right, but she told herself they had imagined it, that they had simply searched in the wrong places, that the children had been there all along. And yet, deep down she knew, something was very wrong. The pattern begins. It happened again the next night. And the night after that. Each time the children vanished without a trace. Each time they returned before sunrise, silent, expressionless, unwilling to say where they had been. Raghav and Meera started keeping watch, but no matter how hard they tried, sleep overtook them at some point in the night, and when they awoke, the beds were empty again. One evening Meera tied bells to the children's wrists, thinking she would hear them move, but when she woke, the bells were on the floor, untouched. Another night, Raghav scattered flour near the door, hoping to catch footprints, but the flour remained undisturbed. It was as if they never walked out, as if they simply disappeared. The village began whispering. "They are cursed," an old woman murmured to Meera one morning. "Take them to the temple," another suggested. Meera ignored the talk, but fear gnawed at her. She could feel the villagers' stares, and deep down she was starting to wonder, were they right? The night of shadows. One night, when the children were supposedly asleep, Meera sat by the small window, refusing to close her eyes. The lantern flickered beside her, casting eerie shadows across the room. She listened. Silence. The children's breathing was steady. Then the air shifted. A cold breeze swept through the room, though the door was shut tight. The flickering lantern cast moving shadows on the walls, and suddenly, the children's beds were empty. Meera's breath caught in her throat. They were gone. But she hadn't blinked. She hadn't looked away, and yet they had vanished before her very eyes. Her heart pounded as she shook Raghav awake. "They're gone again, but I saw it. They didn't walk out, they just—" She stopped. Outside the hut, something moved in the darkness. A rustling, a whisper, then voices. Faint, eerie voices speaking in a language she couldn't understand. Mira clutched Raghav's arm. "They're out there." Raghav grabbed the lantern, his face set in determination. He threw open the door and stepped into the night. The village was still, the cold air heavy with something unseen. And then, at the edge of the forest, they saw them. Their 4 children stood there facing away, their dark silhouettes blending with the trees. "Ravi, Sohan, Leela, Pihu," Raghav called. The children didn't move. Mira's voice trembled. "Come home, my loves." Slowly, in eerie unison, the children turned their heads, too slowly, unnaturally. Their eyes were glowing. A chill crawled up Mira's spine. Then, before her very eyes, the children faded into the shadows of the forest. Mira screamed. Raghav ran forward, but there was nothing there. Only the rustling leaves and the eerie stillness of the night. They searched for hours, but the children were gone. Yet when they returned home at dawn, the children were back in their beds, sleeping, peaceful, as if nothing had happened. And when they opened their wide, unblinking eyes, they smiled. Word of the children's strange disappearances spread through the village like wildfire. Whispers filled the air, traveling from one doorstep to another, from the elders to the farmers, from the temple priest to the traders who visited the village once a month. But no one could explain it. At first, the villagers pitied Raghav and Mira, believing they were simply mistaken. Perhaps the children were sneaking out to play, or maybe the exhausted parents were imagining things. But soon people began watching the children more closely. And what they saw unsettled them. The way their eyes never truly blinked, the way their bare feet left odd imprints, the way they seemed to move in eerie synchronization. Then, one fateful night, Harish saw something he was never meant to see. A terrifying sight. Harish was a farmer, a man who never believed in ghost stories. He worked late in his fields, often returning home long after the village had gone to sleep. That night the moon hung low, bathing the jungle in a dim, eerie light. Harish was walking back, his sickle slung over his shoulder, when he heard something unusual. Laughter. Children's laughter. At first he thought it was a trick of the wind. Who had let their children play in the jungle at this hour? But as he walked deeper, the laughter became clearer, closer. Then he saw them. In a small clearing among the trees, Ravi, Sohan, Leela and Pihu stood in a circle, their backs to him. They were barefoot, their dark skin blending with the night. The moonlight reflected in their wide, unblinking eyes. But something was horribly wrong. They weren't standing on the ground. They were floating. Just a few inches, but unmistakably hovering above the dirt. Harish's breath caught in his throat. His feet refused to move, as if the earth itself was holding him in place. Then, as if sensing his presence, the children all turned, slowly, eerily, until their glowing eyes locked onto his. Harish's heart pounded. A strange, chilling whisper filled the air. The voices weren't coming from the children, but from the darkness around them. And then they moved, not by walking, not by stepping forward. They glided toward him, soundless, unnatural. Harish dropped his sickle and ran, his legs pumping as fast as they could. He stumbled, fell, but forced himself up again. Behind him, the whispers grew louder. The laughter turned into something else, something distorted, something that didn't belong in the human world. He reached the village, breathless, drenched in sweat, and ran straight to Raghav's house. The impossible truth. Harish pounded on the wooden door. "Raghav, Mira, open the door." It took a moment, but then a lantern flickered inside, and the door creaked open. Raghav stood there, groggy, confusion in his eyes. "Harish, what's wrong?" Harish pushed past him, gasping for breath. "Your children, I saw them in the jungle just now." Raghav's face darkened. "That's impossible. They're sleeping inside." Harish shook his head violently. No, I swear it. They were there." Raghav floating, whispering. Mira, now awake, rushed to the children's room. There they were, lying in their beds, sleeping, breathing softly, their small chests rising and falling as if they had never left. Mira turned back to Harish, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've been here all night." Harish felt the world tilt. No, this isn't right. I saw them. They looked at me." Then Pihu stirred. Harish's breath hitched. Slowly she opened her eyes wide and dark, reflecting the lantern light. A small smile curled her lips. "You should go home, Uncle," she whispered. Harish stumbled backward. Something about her voice, layered unnatural, made his stomach churn. And then, one by one, the other children opened their eyes too. All of them. All staring, all smiling. Harish bolted out the door, running as fast as he could. That night he locked his doors and did not sleep. And from that day forward he never spoke of it again. Mira could no longer ignore the truth. Something was wrong with her children. Every night they vanished without a trace. Every morning they returned as if nothing had happened. They never gave an explanation, never showed fear or confusion. And then there were the things she couldn't explain. Their cold skin, their glowing eyes, the whispers in the wind whenever they were near. But the worst part was the feeling, that dreadful gut-wrenching feeling, that the children sleeping in their beds were not her children at all. And then, one night, the nightmare became real. That evening, Mira made up her mind. She would not sleep. She would watch them the entire night and see for herself what was happening. She sat by the dim lantern, staring at their still forms under the blankets. Their breathing was slow, steady. Hours passed. The night outside was silent. No rustling of leaves, no howling of the wind. Just an unnatural stillness. Mira fought the exhaustion creeping over her. Her head bobbed, her eyelids heavy. And then a sound, soft, like a whisper. She snapped awake. The room was dark, the lantern flickering weakly. The children's beds were empty. Her breath caught in her throat. They were gone. The door was still bolted, the windows still shut. But they had vanished. Just like always. Mira shivered, but before she could wake Raghav, something moved. A shadow in the corner of the room. Slowly it stretched, growing taller, its form shifting unnaturally. Then a pair of glowing eyes opened in the darkness. Mira's heart stopped. It was one of her children. But it wasn't. The figure had Pihu's face, Pihu's wide, unblinking eyes. But her mouth stretched too far, curving into an unnatural grin. Mira clutched the blanket, unable to move, unable to scream. The thing in the corner tilted its head. Then, in a voice layered with echoes, it whispered, "Why are you awake, Ma?" Mira's blood turned to ice. The shadowy figure took a step forward, then another. And as it neared, its face shifted. Pihu's features melted, twisting, reforming. It was no longer her daughter. It was something else, a thing that only looked like Pihu. Mira's breath hitched. And then, darkness. The lantern blew out. The room plunged into pitch black. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then a voice right beside her ear. "Go to sleep, Ma." Mira screamed. Light burst back into the room as Raghav lit another lantern. He turned toward Mira, shaking, pale, gripping the blanket, as if her life depended on it. "What happened?" he asked, alarmed. Mira turned to the beds. The children were there, sleeping, peaceful, as if they had never left. But Mira knew what she had seen. And it was not a dream. The next morning, Mira could barely hold her spoon as she stirred the pot of porridge. Her hands trembled. Raghav noticed. "What happened last night?" Mira hesitated, staring at the children as they sat at the table. They were eating quietly, smiling at her in that unsettling way. She lowered her voice. "I saw something. It looked like Pihu, but it wasn't her." Raghav frowned. "What do you mean?" Mira shook her head. "I don't know, but I don't think these are our children, Raghav." Raghav's face paled, but before he could respond, a voice interrupted them. "You should speak to the old woman." Mira turned. It was Harish. The man had been avoiding them since the night he claimed to see the children in the forest. His face was pale, his eyes filled with a fear he couldn't shake. Raghav exchanged glances with Mira, then asked, "Which old woman?" "Aji," Harish whispered. Mira's stomach dropped. Aji was the oldest person in the village, a woman who lived on the outskirts, shunned for her strange ways. People said she had seen things that no human should see. Desperate, Mira and Raghav made their way to Aji's hut. The old woman sat outside, her cataract-covered eyes staring blankly ahead. But when they approached, she spoke before they could. "They are not your children," she rasped. Mira's blood ran cold. Aji turned her blind gaze toward them. "They look like yours, but they are not." Raghav's throat went dry. What are they? Aji's lips cracked into a grimace. Have you heard the stories of the forest? The ones your elders warned you about? Mira nodded slowly. The ones about the night spirits. Aji chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Not spirits, child, changelings. Mira's heart pounded. The jungle is ancient, Aji continued. Older than this village. Older than the temples. And in its depths live beings not meant for human eyes. She leaned forward. Every few generations they take children, and in their place and they leave something else. Raghav clenched his fists. That's impossible. Our children are here. Aji shook her head. Have you ever truly looked at them? They eat, they laugh, they speak, but they are not like the others, and at night, they go where they belong. Mira's breath caught. Then where are our real children? Aji's milky eyes gleamed. Lost. A deep silence settled between them. Then Aji whispered, You should have never let them return. Mira gasped. What do you mean? Aji's face twisted into something unreadable. You brought them back, but they are not yours. Mira's knees went weak. Then Aji said something that sent a bolt of terror through her soul. Your real children are still in the jungle. Mira's hand flew to her mouth, and in the distance the wind carried an eerie sound. Laughter. Not from the children at home, but from deep, deep within the forest. Raghav and Mira could no longer ignore the truth. The things living in their home were not their children. Their real children were still out there, trapped in the jungle, waiting to be found. But the question was who or what had taken them. And worse, what were these things that had replaced them? That night the sky burned red. A blood moon hung low over the village, casting everything in a dark crimson glow. The air felt thick, heavy with something unseen, something watching. Mira and Raghav sat by the lantern, wide awake, their eyes fixed on the children's beds. They weren't taking their eyes off them this time. Hours passed, midnight came, the shadows deepened. And then the children moved. At first it was subtle, a twitch of the fingers, a slow shift of the head. Then all at once they sat up. Ravi, Sohan, Leila, Bihu. All four of them perfectly synchronized. Their wide glassy eyes locked onto Mira and Raghav. They didn't blink, they didn't speak. Just watched. A shiver crawled up Mira's spine. Where are you going? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Silence. Then, Ravi smiled, a slow, unnatural grin that stretched his lips too wide. We have to go now, he said softly. The other three children turned their heads at the same time, too fast, too precise. Come with us, Ma, Pihu whispered. Come see. Mira's heart pounded. See what? Pihu's grin widened. The place where we live now. Before Mira could react, the children moved. Not by getting up, not by walking. They lifted. Their bodies rose into the air, hovering above the beds. Their limbs twisted, bones cracking as they floated toward the door. Mira screamed. Raghav, stop them. Raghav leapt to his feet, reaching for Ravi's arm, but his hand went straight through. Like smoke, like a ghost. The children's mouths opened, but no sound came out. Instead, the lantern flickered violently, the room shifted. Suddenly, they were no longer in their hut. The walls around them melted into darkness, the floor vanished beneath their feet, and in the next instant, they were in the jungle. Mira and Raghav stood in the heart of the forest. The trees around them were twisted, gnarled, stretching into an unnatural sky. The air was thick with fog, the moon above them too big, too red. The children stood a few feet away. Except now, they weren't children. They were something else. Their eyes, once merely wide, now glowed like burning embers. Their limbs were elongated, their fingers too sharp, too thin. Their shadows moved independently, writhing like snakes beneath them. Mira's breath hitched. What are you? She whispered. Leela cocked her head, her neck cracking. We are yours, she said. You made us, you fed us, you loved us. Raghav clenched his fists. Where are our real children? The figures tilted their heads in unison. Pihu grinned, her teeth now too sharp. They're here, she pointed. Mira and Raghav turned and froze. Hanging from the twisted trees were 4 cocoons. Large, pulsing, wrapped in thick black webbing. From inside, muffled screams echoed. Mira's knees buckled. No. She ran toward them. tearing at the sticky, suffocating layers. And then she saw them. Their real children. Their true children, pale, weak, their eyes wide with terror. "Ma," Ravi sobbed, "please get us out." Mira clawed at the cocoon, desperate, sobbing, her fingers bleeding as she ripped through the cursed material. Behind her something moved. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Raghav turned and screamed. From the darkness they came, hundreds of them. Creatures with hollow faces, skin stretched too tight over their bones, eyes black and soulless, mouths filled with rows of jagged teeth. They crawled from the shadows, some too tall, others bent and twisted like broken dolls. The things that had taken their children, the things that had replaced them. One stepped forward, its neck tilting unnaturally as it studied Raghav. Then, in a voice that was almost human, it spoke. "You should have never come here." Mira let out a broken sob. "Take them, take these things, just give us our children back." The creatures laughed, a horrible echoing sound. The fake Ravi stepped forward, his burning eyes filled with amusement. "But we are your children, Ma." He took another step. "You raised us, you cared for us. You let us into your home." A sickening shudder ran down Mira's spine. "You made us strong." Mira turned to Raghav. "We have to run." But it was too late. The creatures lunged. The nightmare had truly begun. Part 2. Mira and Raghav had no time to think. The creatures lunged. Their movements were unnatural, jerking, twisting, their elongated limbs reaching out, their hollow eyes locked onto them. Raghav grabbed Mira's hand. "Run!" Mira hesitated. Her real children were still trapped in the cocoons. But before she could move, the twisted figures of Ravi, Sohan, Leela and Pihu appeared right in front of her. "You don't want them, Ma," the fake Pihu whispered, her head tilting too far to the side. "You want us." Mira screamed and pushed past them, reaching for her true children. Slash! Something sharp tore through her arm. She gasped, clutching her wound. Dark claws glistened in the moonlight. The creatures were playing with her. Raghav grabbed a thick branch and swung wildly, hitting one of the creatures in the face. Its head snapped back, but it didn't react. Instead, it turned back to him, its lips stretching into a horrible, toothy grin. "You cannot hurt us, Baba," it whispered. Then it lunged. Raghav barely dodged, pulling Mira with him. They ran, but the jungle twisted around them. Paths that had been open seconds ago vanished. The trees moved. They were trapped. Mira's breath came in ragged gasps. "What do? We can't leave them." Raghav's mind raced. Then he remembered. Aji. The old woman said they should never have come back. His stomach twisted. If these things had replaced their children, then maybe there was a way to send them back. But how? Mira's screams snapped him back to reality. One of the creatures had grabbed her wrist. It was Leela, or what used to be Leela. Her long fingers tightened, nails digging into Mira's skin. "Stay with us, Ma," she whispered. And then her mouth opened wider, too wide, rows and rows of jagged teeth. She leaned in. Torbita. Crack! A rock slammed into her head. She hissed, releasing Mira. Raghav stood there, panting, gripping another stone. "Let her go!" Mira stumbled back, clutching her bleeding wrist. The creatures surrounded them. There was no way out. Until a voice echoed through the jungle. "Leave them!" The creatures froze. The jungle seemed to shudder, and from the darkness an old bent figure stepped forward. Aji. Her white eyes burned with something powerful. She held a bundle of dried herbs, muttering in a strange guttural language. The creatures hissed. The fake Ravi shrieked. "I cannot take them," Aji shouted, throwing the herbs into the fire. A wave of heat exploded through the clearing. The creatures screamed. The air rippled like water, and suddenly the jungle shifted. The twisted trees faded, the blood moon dimmed, and the cocoons began to tear open. Mira's breath hitched. "Ravi, Pihu, wake up!" The real children gasped for air, their frail bodies trembling as they fell to the ground. Mira ran to them, gathering them in her arms, sobbing. Raghav turned to Aji. "What did you do?" Aji's face was grim. "I sent them back to where they belong." Raghav turned. The fake children, Ravi, Sohan, Leela, and Pihu, stood at the edge of the clearing. Their bodies were fading. Their once perfect faces melted into shadow, their hollow eyes burning with rage. "You should have kept us," The fake Pihu whispered, "You should have loved us." And with one final distorted shriek, they vanished. Sarsi kinbi kintaskats kantime. Mira, Raghav, and their real children stumbled out of the jungle as dawn broke. Their skin was cold, their limbs weak, but they were alive. Aji led them back to the village, her face unreadable. "You were lucky," she muttered. "Few returned from that place." Raghav swallowed. "What were they?" Aji sighed. "Things older than time, they hunger for love, for warmth. They take what they can never have." She turned to the children, her milky eyes piercing. "They will never stop watching." Mira's grip on her children tightened. "What do you mean?" Aji's lips pressed into a thin line. "You brought them back, but you let them in first." She pointed at their hut. Mira's stomach dropped. The door was open, even though they had locked it before leaving. Aji whispered one final warning. "If they ever call to you again, do not answer." Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist. Mira and Raghav stood frozen, their children clinging to them. From inside the house, the floorboards creaked. A whisper drifted out, soft, playful. "Ma!" The nightmare was not over.